Hi, everyone. Welcome to the March 27th, 2023 Site Plan Review Committee subgroup meeting for the 2025 Fairfax Drive project. If that is not what you were here for, please find the correct room. I understand C2E2 is on the third one. We will be holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia for the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy, which was adopted on July 7th, 2022. Members of the SPRC subgroup 4, again, 2025 Fairfax Drive, are participating both here in person and virtually via electronic options. SPRC subgroup members participating virtually include, who's pursuing this? Let's refer to the roster. Who's here virtually? We have Leo Sarley, our SPRC co-chair, is virtual. James Schroll is also virtual. Hi, James. We have Chris Latt, virtual as well. And James Brinton is also virtual. Did I miss anyone assigned to SPRC who is participating virtually? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to assume my list of virtual attendees who are assigned to the SPRC is complete. At this time, we'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage, project webpage, the county's events calendar, and the email notifications sent to SPRC email subscribers. That option for folks. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it for that would be phone only. For our subgroup members joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off sound to any other device around you to minimize interference. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. I will address when it is appropriate to turn it on in a moment. Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve two purposes. SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. Those are the only two purposes for which the chat should be used. Teams chat should not be used for discussion. If we're planning to provide public comment, we'll still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. If subgroup members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on an item during the course of the meeting, please turn on your video feed and raise the virtual hand in Teams. I'll monitor the video feeds that are on as an indicator who would like to speak on a given topic. If subgroup members are participating via phone today without the video option, please announce your name and group you are representing now. I will verbally check in to see if you wish to be recognized, as you do not have the video feed option. I don't believe we have anyone on the SPRC who is participating by phone only. This will be the time to say something to me if that is not the case. Okay. For members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, you will be called on to speak at the end of the meeting. I'll be allotted either 2 or 3 minutes to speak on tonight's agenda item. The speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers we have this evening. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat for virtual attendees, or provide staff with a name if in person, and you'll be added to the speakers list. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and is already being recorded and posted on the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, let's do introductions. That sounds like a better use. Hi, I'm Sarah Steinberger. I am chairing the SPRC meeting this evening on 2025 Fairfax Drive. Additionally, I'm the vice chair of the Planning Commission.
Do you want to tell me, Planning Commission?
Hey, Donahue, Forestry.
Philip Tubes, resident building manager of Tat Towers.
Colin McBeth, chair of the Housing Commission.
Andrew Painter, zoning attorney with Walsh Colucci on behalf of the applicant.
Eileen Horn, architect.
Matt Bunch with Forest Companies. Applicant.
Eileen Maradovich, Transportation Commission. Jerry Laporte, Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board. Leslie Arminsky, Rave Farm.
Trudy Koopa. I'm with the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Kevin Lamb, I'm with the.
I'm Stephen Alessio, C2E2. Sorry about that. That's okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yes, please join us at the table.
Kevin Lamb, County Planner, lead planner for this project.
Lauren Riley.
Here. Okay, we'll start out there in the corner.
Henry Mon, KGPR.
Okay, great.
Pierre Jogger, PhD.
Hi, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Yep, online people. Wow, Kevin, just being honest here. Online people, please introduce yourselves if you were one of the SPRC members that I already announced. Leo, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leo Sarli. I'm co-chairing this. I cannot make it tonight, but and Sarah was gracious enough to. So thank you, Sarah, for covering for me. I am also with the Planning Commission.
Anytime, Leo. James, roll, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. James Schroll, Planning Commission.
Great. It looks like we also have Daniel Weir, another planning commissioner, has joined us. Daniel, you are clearly virtual, so introduce yourself, please.
Daniel Weir, Planning Commission.
Thank you. And I think that was Mr. Brighton, James Brinton, I'm sorry.
Yes, James Brinton. I'm the Vice President of the Taft Towers Board, and I'm out of town, so I'm glad I could join virtually. Thanks.
So we have a duel in terms of Taft Towers. We have two representatives, I believe, from the towers this evening. You're both obviously able to, attend. One of you will be the official representative for this evening. It's him. Okay, you're
He's VP of the board.
He's VP of the board, so he trumps. Okay, there you go, James. Thank you. We're glad you attend. We will defer to you as the official representative then for purposes of the SPRC subgroup attendees. And sorry, other Taft Towers. I apologize. You'll be able to comment in public comment if you'd like at that point. You had a question?
Yeah, you have a representative from the Wakefield Manor tenants. Not officially on the SPRC roster, but they have been invited to participate. Okay, so they were invited to serve on the SPRC, but they decided not to. Not, I guess, in an official capacity on the SPRC. Why did we not invite you?
Can we finish with introductions and then go into that for a second?
Sure.
I think we had one more. Chris Blatt, are you online? He might have a conflict. Okay, we may or may not have Chris Blatt joining us virtually. Oh, I'm sorry. So I apologize. You did say transportation. Never mind. Transportation is physically in the building. Okay, moving on. Now we can discuss the roster question. And okay, back to your question on the roster.
Yeah, my question was why didn't we officially invite a tenant representative from Wakefield Manor to sit on this SPRC? Typically, with regards to that we reach out to for the SPRC, they're usually, establish civic associations or condo boards, which bring membership. Whereas in terms of Wakefield Manor, thinking about how best to involve them, given the fact they don't kind of have an official structure there. So I think that's kind of the reason why didn't officially put them on the SPRC roster, but we have done outreach with them, online engagement, the walking tour, as well as participation in these. I think from an equity perspective, not having a seat at the table for, especially Wakefield Manor, it's like very low priced apartments. Basically your lower income or moderate income isn't, whereas you have ownership from, condos. It's just kind of a mismatch in who's represented at the table. I know this is an issue with SPRCs in general, that they typically don't have tenants represented. But I would strongly encourage both planning staff as well as planning commission to look at ways to ensure that tenants actually have a seat at the table, because they're going to be impacted by what happens, even if they're not here to be able to comment and speak as the rest of us are.
Okay, thank you. With that, we are going to go to
we're having a bit of audio issues in terms of the mics picking up speakers. So I guess, moving forward, make sure you speak clearly, just so that the mics can pick it up.
Okay, I will do the best I can with that. I have a small person at home now who constantly makes me sick, so my voice is gonna go in and out. That's just what it is. Okay, but I appreciate that. Presentations?
Yes.
Take it away. County will present first, and then we will have the applicant do a presentation as well.
And public comment at the end.
Public comment at the end of the meeting. We'll first go through the agenda. So tonight we have for discussion topics, we'll be doing land use and density, site design and layout, building height, form and architecture, open space and landscaping. Public comment will be the end, so it can encompass any and all of those topics or other.
Great. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. I'm Kevin Lamb with the Planning Division. And tonight I will be providing staff's presentation on the 2025 Fairfax Drive project. So this is considered a major site plan amendment. Therefore, throughout my presentation, I will be referring to the originally approved site plan. It was approved in 2011, just for comparison purposes. Well, I first wanted to orient everyone to kind of the overarching policy guidance for this project, which is the Fort Myers Heights North plan. So the area that this plan covers is shown here and distinguished by low-scale historic garden apartments with mature trees and open lands, open spaces. So the plan was adopted in 2008 and arose out of concerns that new development was eroding the unique fabric of this community. And as a result, the plan does have several overarching goals, including the preservation of affordable housing, the neighborhood character and historic buildings, preservation of trees and tree cover and significant trees. And it also calls for the provision of public and private open space, as well as an improved neighborhood edge and pedestrian-oriented streetscape along Fairfax. So the project is identified as Block 8 in the plan as likely to redevelop. So it is recommended that the 3 historic properties currently existing on the site are preserved. And as part of the original site plan approval, the buildings were indeed preserved in exchange for a transfer of development rights. So the plan notes that given the limited developable area on the block, flexibility with regards to other plan and county recommendations may therefore be needed to make redevelopment of the site financially feasible. So the first topic for discussion tonight is land use and density. So this table compares the approved site plan with the proposed amendment. So the proposed amendment consists of more units for a total of 250 units at the site. This corresponds to an increase in total density, which is now at 2.60 FAR. And for context, this number refers to the total density of the entire site, inclusive of the existing courthouse and Wakefield Manor properties. Therefore, the amount of new density is equal to 1.75 FAR, or approximately 142,000 square feet. So here is the approved site plan layout. And as you can see, the approved site plan was oriented towards Fairfax and Troy, with the main entrance located on the street corner. Parking and loading access was off Fairfax Drive, with walking paths surrounding the new building. An at-grade terrace garden was located in the rear of the property and sloped down towards the new building. This provided direct access out of the new building north towards the courthouse area and the metro. Other features include sidewalk improvements around the entire block, as well as reconfiguring the existing Fairfax Drive dead end area into a cul-de-sac. The underground transformer vaults were to be located here in front of the Wakefield Manor building on Fairfax Drive. So the proposed building is oriented in a similar fashion, with the main entrance also located at the corner. There is parking loading access off Fairfax Drive, as well as an additional parking access point on Troy, which is exclusively for the mezzanine level parking. Unlike the approved plan, the applicant is proposing an elevated private terrace located on the second level, which doesn't have direct access to the ground level. The applicant is still providing the sidewalk improvements around the entire block, as well as the Fairfax Drive cul-de-sac. And the underground transformer vaults are located in the same location, but this time enhanced with landscaping and hardscape. So another key component of the plan are the design guidelines, which recommends or includes recommendations related to new development being inspired by colonial revival or Art Deco styles. They should include appropriate tapers and setbacks compatible with the neighborhood scale. And new development should also incorporate step backs along Fairfax Drive that should be at least 15 feet starting at the fourth floor. So here are some images of the existing properties. So we have Courthouse Manor, and then the Wakefield Manor properties here. And as you can see, these buildings have a lot of architectural detail, but are also characteristic of the low-rise garden apartments in terms of massing and scale. So the next couple slides show the elevations of the approved and proposed buildings. Each are around 125 feet tall, and the facades are mostly comprised of red brick material. And then here I want to highlight the building-to-building separation and height transition with the adjacent historic properties. So in both of these instances, on the Fairfax Drive side, there is 13.5-foot separation between or at the podium level, followed by a 5-foot step back above the fourth. So this next view is looking west. So Fairfax Drive is located here. And on Fairfax Drive, in both cases, there is no 15-foot step back above the fourth floor as recommended by the plan. On Troy Street itself, the approved site plan has a 30.5-foot separation followed by a 5-foot step back. However, the proposed building instead only has 18.5 foot building-to-building separation with no height transitions down towards historic properties. So while the plan is not explicit in how much distance there should be between buildings, it does recommend new buildings provide appropriate tapering down to lower scale buildings and setbacks compatible with the neighborhood scale. The staff have raised concerns about the new building being sited too close to the existing properties, especially on Troy. It even deviates from what was originally approved, as well as the lack of a step back. And then here I just wanted to kind of illustrate the point a bit further. So for visual purposes, I did pull a few examples of building separation between recent new development and garden style apartments or townhomes. So this first example here is Union on Queen, which is also located in the Fort Myers Heights North area. So this has a building to building separation of 32.5 feet with a step back above the 5th floor. And then next we have Sedona Slate, which is located closer to the Roslyn area, which has a 29-foot separation with no step back. And then finally, we have 672 Flats located in Ballston. This project has a 22-foot separation between new building and the adjacent townhomes. Also, it has a step back above the 1st floor, And I just wanted to note this driveway width here is 12 feet. So another component of the plan are recommendations for open spaces and significant trees. Per the plan, open spaces should evoke the garden apartment aesthetic of open lawns and trees. The spaces should be clearly viewed by residents and passersby, creating a sense of openness. And it also strongly recommends the preservation of significant trees or their replacement per the county guidelines. These images here show the open spaces currently at the site, as well as the significant tree identified in the plan located in the southeast corner near the parking lot. So this shows the approved and proposed conceptual landscape plans. As noted before, the main feature of the approved plan is that at-grade terrace garden in the rear. And the proposed plan, again, shows the private open space in the same location, but this time it will be elevated with no direct access to the ground level. So taking a closer look at the proposed courtyard, it's approximately 2,400 square feet. It includes seating, some outdoor grills, and planter beds. And from this view, you can kind of see here the courtyard is at least 7 feet above the ground elevation on this side. So kind of overall, especially compared to the approved plan, staff are concerned the proposed elevated courtyard does not meet the intent of the plan guidance related to creating a sense of openness and also keeping with the garden apartment aesthetic. So staff are looking into ways to further soften this edge and increase permeability with the rest of the site. So just to conclude kind of where we are in the public review process, we are having our first SPRC meeting tonight, followed by a second one tentatively scheduled for May 15th, which will cover these other topics shown here. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but first I'll hand it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Painter with Walsh Colucci. Working with Fortis on this 4.1 site plan amendment. I think we're pretty excited to be here tonight. This has been a long time coming, not only for Fortis, but just to actually realize the some sort of development on the site in accordance with the Fort Myers Heights North plan policies and actually bring this project to fruition. Matt Bunch is the vice president with Fortis, and I thought I'd ask him to share a few words about the work that he's been doing with the property owner and some of the issues that we've been facing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We're very excited about this project in the neighborhood. We think it's a wonderful block, and we think it's an ideal location with the county for new transit-oriented housing. As you know, we've alluded to, it is pretty uncommon for a project in the county that's approved for multifamily to not get built for over a decade. So we've understood that and the challenges that have been faced that have prevented this project from moving forward. And we've kind of gone into the process of eyes wide open. We put together an excellent design team over the last 2.5 years. We've been working on it and trying to work through various obstacles that have presented or prevented it from moving forward. And we think we've come up with some really creative solutions to try to make this work and finally bring it to fruition. So we look forward to working with the community and the community, getting this project over the finish line.
So what I thought we'd do, we just kind of have a sort of a bifurcated presentation. I'll start off just talking about land use and density, some of the things that Kevin mentioned in his. We can go to the next slide. I think we all know where it is. It's a site. It's about 80,000 square feet, bound by 13th Street to the north, out at Courthouse Road to the west, Troy Street to the east, and Fairfax Drive to the south. Slide. So from a general land use plan perspective, it is planned for medium residential. There's a note on it that does group within the Fort Myers Heights North Special District, which is a zoning ordinance district. And then there is the separate Fort Myers Heights North plan that staff mentioned, which I'll talk about in just a second. Here we go. So as Kevin mentioned, it is located in Block 8. It's recommended as a redevelopment site. And what's interesting about this is that it plan grouped density and targeted density on this site. And you can see these drawings from the plan as a way to help finance the preservation of the existing Courthouse Manor and Wakefield Manor buildings. So in 2011, you had the prior plan, which we'll talk about in just a second. But there was a transfer of development rights that was certified from this property as well, about 104,000 square feet. And then that density was transferred over to the Wendy's landmark block across the street in 2015. Excuse me, in 2016. And at that point in time, there was a historic preservation covenant that was placed on those buildings. The Fort Myers Heights North plan calls for 12 stories or 125 feet in height. There are a series of design guidelines that Kevin mentioned, such as orienting the building towards Fairfax Drive, incorporating colonial revival and Art Deco elements, open spaces that are responsive to passersby. And in this case, the majority of passersby would be on Courthouse Road, on Fairfax Drive, or North Troy Street. And then in the bottom of the screen, you can see the axonometric image. The massing for this has always sort of considered this shape and height, which our proposal seeks to replicate. And that's the guidance that we're trying to meet. So we go to the next slide. So what was approved back in 2011 was a 12-story building, 104 units, about 105,000 square feet of residential GFA. It included the historic preservation of the existing buildings and the transfer of development rights. There was about 4,700 square feet that was dedicated to on-site affordable housing. So under the Fort Myers Heights plan, anytime you take it through a 4.1 site plan, you have your base affordable housing contribution, and then you have a special on-site affordable housing contribution. In this case, it was 4,700 square feet. And in most 4.1 site plans, there's bonus density. So there would be an additional opportunity to get affordable housing. What they did in 2011 was to back into the amount of density so that there was no bonus density. So there were no additional community benefits above sort of the base contribution amount. So that was the extent of the affordable housing contribution. There were a series of problems with the prior approval. Fortis has gone through, they've done a series of geotechnical studies. They've looked at the topography, at the size of it. And I think, as we mentioned in our initial video, there are issues with significant rock deposits granite directly below the site. And that's something you usually see in Roslyn, but you have it here too, which really makes excavation and blasting and just excavating very, very difficult. There are a series of utilities which run along the Fairfax Drive frontage that have to be relocated. It is a spaghetti of different wet and dry utilities. There were issues with the interior layouts of the proposed building, the exterior facade elements, which were not environmentally friendly. All of this sort of contributed, I think, or we think at least, to the building not being financially feasible to construct. Go to the next slide. So with all of that, what we're trying to do is to bring a project to market that actually can be financed and actually constructed. The building itself would be 166 units, 12 stories, just like the prior one. There is an increase in density from 105,000 square feet to 142,000 square feet. And we do seek to respond to a lot of the site constraints that we've identified. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eileen for a walkthrough the design and massing of the building.
So, hello. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you tonight. So we'll start with sustainability. We are working under the new Green Building Incentive Policy. So we will be meeting LEED V4 new construction gold with 20% energy benefits and all the other prerequisites, including the EV parking and the EV ready, bird-friendly materials, biophilia design, and Energy Star and WaterSense appliances and fixtures. We will be going for a bonus FAR 0.35 with 3 extra items, which will, in our case, be the envelope commissioning and air leakage testing, building life cycle impact reduction, and the procurement of off-site solar renewable energy. 3 points because we have a very small site, tight site. So this is the site plan you've seen, slow, but there you go. You've seen this already in Kevin's presentation. And so I will just keep on moving. One of the things that we have done since we first, in the upper right corner, you'll see our initial submission. In talking to staff and addressing concerns that we've heard, we have added the landscaping and gardens at the transformer vault lid area. We reconfigured the cul-de-sac so it matches closer to what was originally approved, adding landscape and open green space and trees. So this site is really tight and it was a puzzle. And so one of the requirements that was placed on our client was the requirement to provide 30 parking spaces for the residents of Wakefield Manor, not the ones living in the new building, but the ones that are already living in Wakefield Manor. So we have parking access off of Troy for 30 parking spaces for Wakefield Manor residents. And the reason we can do this is that there is a huge amount of grade changes. You know, the neighborhood, there's a lot of grade change along Troy. It's very steep. So we have one entrance on Troy that is its own level, and then we come down to Fairfax, and that's where we have the entrance with another 90 parking spaces for the residents of this building and the loading off of Fairfax, similar to the previous approval. And we have then in blue, you can see that would be the entrance to the building. So you're really looking at a composite plan here that shows you several floors so that we can show you how it addresses the change in the grade. And here we've listed the various parking that's being provided. If you look at the parking just for the new building, we're providing a 0.54 ratio. For the Wakefield Manor site in its entirety, it's a 0.48. The buildings at Wakefield Manor were designed by Mihan Masrobian. We did a careful study of the work that he did, including the Boardman Park. And you've seen the buildings as they are today. We do have one historic photo of the Wakefield Annex, but you can see some of the historic references, the curved balconies and windows, the corner windows, the detailing. So we looked to include those things in our design. Up top right, you can see the view from 13th Street over the Courthouse Manor building toward the new building. And then down at the lower left is the view from Courthouse Road through the Wakefield Manor to the new building. This is the view looking down from the west, down 50, where you could see the new building next to the overpass for Courthouse and the adjacent buildings around. And then these are diagrams to show you sort of how we are using these devices, design devices to reference the historic design and the existing buildings. So you can see the existing roof lines of the lower rise buildings. We're taking that and we are using those incorporating those into the cornices and the historic horizontal banding at the base. The entry for both buildings is on Fairfax Drive, and we have the step backs that that reference also those same levels in terms of the adjacent roof lines. Here you can see some of the brick detailing. On the right, you can see the historic references, and these are actually photos of the existing buildings. And on the left, you can see the brick detailing that we are particularly focusing at the pedestrian level. So you can really feel that sense of texture in the brick as you walk down the street and the real sense of quality and presence of the building. In terms of the formal composition of the building, we look, there's a, the Serbian was fairly traditional in the top, middle, base, tripartite division. So we've taken that and repeated that at a larger scale while still referencing the base across to the existing building. And here you can also see the step back. So we listened carefully to the concerns of staff about the separation between the buildings. So there is a a 16-foot separation at the Troy access when you're walking between, and then as you go up to the next floor, there's another step back to increase that to 18.6, and then it continues to open up. But you can also see that the space itself, right, it opens to the space above. And I think I've covered the windows. We are taking those same window references and we're incorporating them in a compatible location. Here you can see some of the incorporation of the curved elements in the curved balconies that occur over the entrance to the building. This is the access from Troy. So this is what you would see. There is a mountable curve so that the access to the Wakefield Manor is still available. And then this is the path that takes you to the steps, seating that we have in the back, and this new significant tree that we are planting at the back of the building, sort of in this this communal space for Wakefield Manor and for the residents. In looking again at these at the separation of the buildings, we wanted to make sure that you understand that there is only this 49 feet of distance where we have the most compression in that space between the buildings, and then it opens up so that in the end the average separation is about 49 feet. We have one space where it's very compressed, and then it immediately opens up to a much larger space. Here you can see some of the biophilic design for the courtyard in the back, the use of the natural materials, the organic forms, planting the views. And you can see where we have put the specimen canopy tree here in the corner, which is really a very important focal point for the community in terms of the Wakefield Manor and the residents of the new building. I mentioned earlier the parking garage that is dedicated to the Wakefield Manor residents. So you enter on Troy, but there is an access to this from adjacent to the step seating and the circle. So right. So there's an entrance at the bottom of the curved area there, right there, right. That is a pedestrian entrance into the parking garage. And then there are paths on either side that connect and create that urban edge to the existing garden apartments. And here you can see the way we are dealing with the vault covers. That on the right are the examples of the kinds of vault lids, and then on the landscaping, native and adaptive plants, butterfly garden, planting in this area in front of the existing Wakefield Manor. Here you can see from the Wakefield Manor pathway that we showed you earlier, this approach to the new building, the specimen tree with seating around it, and this stepped seating, which really creates a kind of a front porch, so that this is a place where neighbors can sit, meet, greet, and then over to the right is the access to the oops, go back. That's the next one, but that's that entrance into the park.
This is the entrance, Eileen, not to cut you off, but this is the entrance where, for those who are at home, next to the right of the person reading. That's the entrance to the 30 spaces that would be for the existing Wakefield residents, the exclusive spaces for them, so they don't have to walk up or down. They're just right there.
And so these are the elevations of the view from between the buildings, right? So from on the top elevation is the view of the north facade. So you're standing in between Wakefield Manor looking south. And so this is where you can see the step seating, the green wall, and the plantings and the plantings on the terrace itself. So this transition down to the neighborhood. And down on the lower one takes you from, you can see the red and white door is the parking garage entrance, and that goes downhill toward Fairfax. And then here we are again too. This is the view in the back with this focal point with the tree specimen tree and with the seating. This is really an important place for the interlocking.
I just, how much is left? 'Cause we
That's
just wanna
it, I'm
get to
done.
this stuff. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. No problem. So at this point in time, we will do clarifying questions, which is to say questions where you're seeking a clarification on something that was in either presentation. And then we'll move into the rest of the agenda, which is topical. I will take chair's privilege and ask the first clarifying question. Can you go back to the slide that showed the overhead bird's eye view of sort of the space between the two buildings? This one. Yes. Where it is narrowest between the two buildings, how long is it that narrow?
49, the 49 feet, 2 inches. There, it's 16.
It's 60, so it's 49 feet of a 16-foot separation.
The
From
narrowest
49
part.
feet, it's 16 feet apart.
16 feet apart below, 18'6" higher. Yes.
Okay, and that lasts for 49 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that in the one, and what about in the lower?
Lower one, the closest areas are only 19 feet wide.
Okay.
And those are similar to the previous design, and that there's 13'6" to the lower part of the podium, and then it opens up also, it steps back.
Okay, but how long is it that narrow at that
19
location?
feet.
Also, so 19 feet,
19 feet is the closest area.
that's 19 feet, and the other length you showed before is 49 feet.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I was just wondering if there are any additional resident-only amenities that you guys are interested in sharing with us at this point, namely outdoor dog space or a dog run area, maybe for residents that you guys are considering or interested in sharing at this point?
Well, there's a lot of open space on the site for that, but we are planning to incorporate more green space than is currently there on Fairfax at the circle. So we've added that. So now there's some green area.
But nothing at this point that you're proposing in the building design for residents only?
Yes.
Yeah, that, what's up there right now, that open space, is that only for residents of the new building that it is not at all accessible to anybody else?
That's correct, yeah.
Would not, I still have the topography close, so I get that the garage for the building. But coming off of Troy Street, bifurcate that pathway, some goes down, some stays low, and goes right. Park here. Make it accessible. Two, originally, the original site plan. The original site plan, it was open to everybody. Wasn't it? That open space.
Yeah, no, it was.
Okay, because if you did that, you would then have it accessible to everybody. I like the steps, by the way, for the one in the amphitheater, so I think that's a very good element there. But I'm still a little squeezy about making that.
I appreciate the first part was a clarifying question, and the second part was a comment to be handled.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Yes.
How many parking spots are currently in the lot that's going to be destroyed for this?
Approximately 40, 42, 43 spots.
Okay, so they're losing parking. The current residents are.
Yeah, there are 10 existing surface parking spaces up along North Troy Street. There's about 42 to 45 spaces here. So we would be replacing those with the building. And then the owner has requested at least a minimum of 30 parking spaces be provided for the existing Wakefield Manor residents.
That's right. Is the owner the same? Is it Johnson Associates for both products?
Yes, but I'm going to take privilege again and ask a clarifying question, and I may be breaking my own rule about this, but are all of the parking spaces for Wakefield Manor that are available now currently used? Are they fully parked?
I lived there for 10 years. I can answer that question. Yes.
Okay.
there's
Yes.
not enough spots for all the current residents. So if you come home too late, you have to park like a mile away or something. So there's not currently enough spots for everyone.
Actually, Jerry had his hand up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I heard three elements you mentioned, the reasons why you need this new site plan. One was because there were significant rock deposits. And another one, you had a lot of utilities to be moved. And I don't know what the third one was. But
Well, the rock is certainly part of it, but one thing that wasn't, the design itself, the prior design it's a very small building. It's a very boutique building. So it's very inefficient from a material and design standpoint. So we need to add efficiency to the building design and add additional more square footage and units. One. And then, that's primary. It's so other than the rock, the grade, and then it's just the efficiency and the scale of the amount of improvements for such a small site. So then also the utilities.
so you're saying that the other site wasn't designed big enough to be buildable on a financial basis.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and also, I've got my list here, which I can go through. Maybe you can speak to some of this too. But as far as the parking goes, there were 189 parking spaces with that, which required extensive excavation and geotechnical work. And there was also an angular shape, and that had, I think, led to an inefficient core as far as where the elevators were. There were no squared off rooms. They were all kind of all at angles, which decreased their marketability as well. That was something that you had mentioned. The materials that were chosen in terms of continuous insulation, airtight construction, high performance windows, those things were not really provided for. And I'm trying to see as well. I think that was pretty much it. But I mean, you all did months of geotechnical studies.
There's also groundwater down there.
Water.
So one of the key things is we needed to just elevate the lowest level of the garage somewhat. And then we needed to find a way to design that we could create and provide 30 dedicated spaces for the existing residents.
And then as you all have gone through, so something else that's come up, so it's not just a money thing, but there's also changes in the marketplace over the last decade, which you all have identified. One is shared spaces for, common areas, working from home, those types of things. That was one. Need for short-term delivery, drop-offs, Ubers, which we can talk about in the next SPRC meeting. Package storage, that's another item that you had brought up. Bicycle storage, which was not as prevalent back in 2011 as far as where the county's policies were. And then again, the parking for the existing residents, putting parking spaces. That's something that was not guaranteed under the last site plan.
And the unit sizes were a little bit too big for today's market. Our units are going to be a little bit smaller just to try to get to a lower chunk rent for the market.
I have a clarifying question about the parking, instead of 30 parking spots for the existing residents. That's a complete, I didn't see a section of how that looks. That's completely separate
Yes.
from all the others. They don't
And
connect.
there's no connection between,
Okay.
between that level and the other level. It's really the only way to do that.
Is there a section of that anywhere, like on the online? Because I saw the drawing, so that's
So for those that are at home on the screen, just to clarify, so this is North Troy Street. See where the arrow is to the right, and then there's a red arrow that goes into the upper level of the parking. So that is at grade, pretty much at grade with the pathway and where the sort of the exterior where the tree is and everything like that. And then there's a direct line, just for convenience on that level for people to exit directly right by the tree. And then this is 2 floors down as you come down.
You can see it says 162 feet up to the entrance of the Troy Street entrance, and then down on Fairfax, 150, essentially 155 feet. So that's a big difference, right?
So this goes under parking for the existing residents.
Okay, and bicycle parking on G2 and G3, that's only going to be for the new residents, right?
Yes.
They're not going to have, current residents are not going to have access.
All Okay, it is your hand, we're gonna go end of the table and then James roll, and I'd like to wrap up clarifying questions at that point and move to the agenda. So, yep.
So I'm Stephen. You guys mentioned a whole bunch of awesome sustainability aspects of the project. Is this gonna be a zero carbon building?
No, I don't think so. That's not. That's gassy.
Okay, James roll, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to kind of pick up on one of the previous speakers, so it's my understanding that there's not a way to internally ramp to allow for the Wakefield Manor residents to have separate parking within the building and eliminate that curb cut on Troy.
Commissioner Schroll, that's correct. And a lot of it has to do with providing a lobby area and the ramping system that would be required to get up and down.
Okay. Inefficient is sort of what I'm hearing, yes?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And then regarding the bike storage, has the applicant looked at bike storage at grade without having to go into the parking garage?
So you can, I think you can go from the lot. It's all internal, so it's still in the parking garage. Still have to get into the parking.
So that's in the garage. So the applicant hasn't looked at putting it accessible from the lobby or without having to go into the garage.
But we didn't have the area to do it, right? Because there's a certain size that we have to have for that room. And it was a puzzle, and we didn't get that in there. So we made accommodations for that on the level below.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have some more comments later.
Yeah, I think that'll come up in the next SPRC for transportation potentially. I look forward to the feedback. All right, thank you for everyone for clarifying question.
Yes.
Okay, real quick.
You mentioned affordable housing. I'm unclear on, is there just a contribution to AHIP that's being made, or what's actually happening with affordable housing?
So there's 3 levels of affordable housing for those projects that are subject to Fort Myers Heights North Special District. So one is your base affordable housing contribution, and that gives an applicant the ability to do a contribution to AHIP or do on-site units or near off-site units. So that'll be just a standard site plan condition that would be imposed, and that would be at the election of the applicant. The second level is the Fort Myers Heights District requires that 20% of the gross floor area above the general land use plan maximum of 1.6 FAR be dedicated to on-site affordable. So in the prior plan that was approved back in 2011, they had 4,700 square feet that they, based on that calculation, that they had to provide for on-site units. 25% of that was included in the existing Wakefield Manor buildings, like the historic buildings. They were going to designate, however many units as committed affordable units. And then 75% of that 4,700 square feet would be provided. We're roughly the same as far as the amount that we would be providing for that sort of second tier. Okay, so you've got the base, and that again is the applicant, check, you can do whatever. And that second tier is that 20% above the glove maximum or maximum of 1.65 FAR. And then there is the question about the bonus density. So we are requesting about 24,000 square feet of bonus density, and we have on a per FAR foot base for that bonus density. A certain percentage of that bonus density, the value of that, we would be enrolling into on-site affordable somewhere on the property, and that will be subject to negotiation, which we haven't gotten to. So there's 3 levels.
So at this point, you don't know how many units yet would be committed affordable, either in the existing Wakefield Manor or in the new building.
One thing that we do know is that approximately 4,700 square feet have to be provided on-site units. The rest would be subject to negotiation. And for the base affordable contribution will be at the applicant's discretion.
And the 4,700 that was split in the prior approval, we're assuming is going to be for the new building.
Is that all 4,700 inside the new building? All right, let's get into the meat of it then. First up is land use and density. Questions, concerns, not scary question or just wondering?
These are additional questions beyond.
Well, yeah, this
clarifying
is
questions?
yeah, now we're into the agenda. And this is free flowing discussion.
Oh,
The
no, I
first
don't-
topic
I
on
don't
is
have
land
any.
use and density.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on land use and density? Or comment on land use and density? Does not have to be a question. Yeah.
So, I mean, y'all are limited to 12 floors with the Fort Myer, Ventnor Heights plan, right? Can't go,
Floors or 100.
yeah, can't go anymore. There's no exceptions.
Not for this zoning district.
Okay.
Okay. I would have allowed that as a clarifying question.
Yeah, well, I didn't think about that.
That's okay.
Allow.
That's easy.
I'm-
Moving to,
Leo has.
oh, sorry. Hi, Leo. My bad. Hello.
Hi, Leo Sarley with the Planning Commission again. I was just looking at the talking about density, and I was taking a look at the units with bedroom counts, and I don't see a single 3-bedroom unit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and can you explain a little bit why, like, how the market sort of relates to that, and why we can't get any sort of family-sized units here?
And I'll turn it over to Matt, but just so everyone knows and understands the unit breakdown, I think it's including the SPRC staff report. So the studio units are 17.5% of the total number. Junior 1-bedrooms and 1-bedrooms are 47% of the total. And then 2-bedrooms and 2-bedroom dens are 18%. So really trying to respond to market, given that we are about 2 blocks away from the Metro Rail station. And Matt, you can speak to market.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna market study on the site and kind of get recommendations for mix. And I will say that for the 2-bedroom and dens that we have, you know, we'll probably end up, once we get further in the design process, and that is an opportunity for 3 bedrooms. So right now, this is where we think the market is today, but I wouldn't say that we ruled out design.
Great, thanks.
I have a question on the distinction between, what is the difference between a bedroom and a junior bedroom? Whatever you said.
Well, a junior, I guess, a 2-bedroom and den, you know, you add a closet to the den, it could potentially be.
Be a 3rd bedroom,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, and so.
And does not have to
Doesn't
have a-
necessarily.
Because I don't think it has to have something. Let's change or something.
Yeah, it's just a closet.
So it's a junior. Can I just hear? I thought it was bedroom and then a junior 1 bedroom. That is the thing. Are those the same thing? How are they different?
The junior 1-bedroom.
A junior, you know, it's like it's more than a studio and
Less than a bedroom?
but less than a 1-bedroom,
So
yeah.
it
So
feels like it's divided into 2 spaces, but it's not.
Okay, so like in Europe, it'd be a studio?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
1 bedroom.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I know staff had said as part of the engagement process, they talked to residents at the property. Can you provide more information about what current residents have said about the proposed development and their kind of thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think we heard a lot through the online engagement process where we received hundreds of responses. We actually broke it down between current residents of the property as well as other residents around the community. That is posted online, and we have a kind of a frequently asked questions section where we can summarize kind of the responses per topic. And we also have staff and applicant responses to that. Because generally we heard a variety of responses from current tenants. We can actually go back and kind of sift through the data there, but I don't know if you wanted specifics.
General sentiments, what are the major concerns that people have, or are people generally supportive? Like, I think that's more, again, since we don't have anyone representing the residents here at the table, it'd be helpful to know as part of the discussion what you heard from us.
Yeah, I think, one kind of major topic that comes to mind is the parking, which was kind of localized by people who attended the walking tour itself. I think you alluded to that, where, the 30 spaces doesn't necessarily replace the 5 spaces there currently. And as you've experienced, there is a high occupancy rate of the spaces, so that definitely connects out through.
There was also an issue too with building constructability and how it was going to affect the historic buildings from just a foundational perspective, excavating, the length of time period that it was going to take to construct the buildings, those types of things. I would say that the residents that were there, I think there were probably about 6 residents that came to the walkthrough, which was I don't know, I think there was maybe 4, 5, 7. I thought it was
Under 10.
under 10.
6 seems reasonable. I did not do a head count.
But I would say that, I mean, the other issues were raised. I don't know if there was a sentiment one way or the other, but the parking was definitely the biggest issue. And then also just building, the time frame, the design, how you are going to construct the buildings.
Back to them during this.
Sorry, I was discussing is on the topic of, and I'd made a note already, on the topic of construction plan and sort of what the development of the site, how that will physically be managed. I was saying, usually we have that, I thought, as its own topic for an SPRC agenda, usually at meeting 2. I don't see that as a called out separate topic for meeting 2. So I'd like to make sure we have that as its own topic for meeting 2. I think that's consistent with how we typically handle SPRCs, and that was something that residents at Wakefield Manor did call upon. And honestly, I think the logistics of having that be an ongoing, residents continuing to live and use those buildings while the construction is happening. Logistically, I think that we would all benefit from hearing that section.
I'm sure there was also one other item, which was trash collection. That so I mean, like, if there was a building, where the trash is right now, it's right on the northern edge of where this building is. Are they going to have to truck it all the way up the hill and stuff like that? So we've been working to try to find a way around that and thread that needle, which we can walk through. I think we have a solution there. But that was just another item.
And I know one of the challenges with the property, and I think I mentioned this before the meeting started, but when they redid the off ramp for Arlington Boulevard, they took away what used to be the street, and so for deliveries or even just telling people your address, it's really complicated if you live on North Courthouse Road at the bottom because no one can stop there, and so everyone has to go around to North Fairfax. Which is going to be very complicated when everything's under construction, because then it's like, how do people get to my home, or how do I get to my home for living there? And I think just especially, I know you guys mentioned that the thought of deliveries and things like that, but also thinking for the people who they have to rely on North Fairfax Drive currently to, or Fairfax Drive, for all of that, because they don't have North Courthouse Road as an option. And same thing for like Uber, Lyft, stuff like that. That a lot of those residents are dependent on that street for, all those types of services.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next topic, which is site design and layout? Getting some consensus on that. Okay. Site design and layout. Site design and layout, the next topic. I thought, Leo, did you have, James, you have your hand up. So James, take it away.
Yeah. So with regard to the partially above grade parking garage, the portion that's on North Troy, how are we making sure that that facade is, in that portion of the building, is sort of a safe pedestrian experience. Can you talk through how you're lighting that space? The kind of portion beyond the lobby. Can you just kind of talk through what you're planning right now?
Yeah, you're talking about the area that we're looking at in the photograph?
No. So
The Troy entrance, the other side.
the
of the
Troy entrance, yeah, the east facade. Also, as you're pulling it up, well, it'd probably be easier to just talk through kind of as you're walking down the building from the other entrance. So I guess as you're doing this, it would be helpful in the future if you actually numbered your slides.
My slides are numbered, but they're small. I agree with you there.
All right. Where would be a good slide?
6, this is 19.
18 perhaps. This is fine. So you're just wondering sort of what you're doing here to kind of have eyes on the street, what you're doing here to have make this a safe pedestrian experience for people kind of walking through here, since what's behind this is parking, correct?
No. So the only part of this that you are seeing that is parking is the parking entrance where up near the Troy access. That's the entrance. The rest of it is open to the lobby, and there's a 2-story lobby. And so that is definitely lit from both inside and on the street. So that would definitely be eyes on the street. That is not parking garage open. You can't see the into the parking garage from Troy.
Okay, that's helpful. Appreciate it.
It might be helpful for the next meeting to kind of get maybe a better visual on what that experience will sort of be. I'm not sure there's a slide that sort of fully conveys. I appreciate James pulling the thread on that because I think it was hard to tell. And so maybe perhaps a slide that better addresses that for next time.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, I would also suggest if we're talking about some of this better plan view slides would be helpful. There's some better stuff in what you've submitted, I think, that convey more detail than the slides that you walked through this evening. But I appreciate it, and it's helpful.
We moved beyond design already, or
No.
are we on that now?
We are on design and layout right now.
So if I have a question.
Please, this is the moment.
Yeah, one of the things, I was on the HLRD when we approved this site plan way back when, and one of the greatest things of that other site plan was, to me, the way it complemented the current structures there. I mean, it looks like a modern building, but it really reflects the structures. And one of the ways the previous architects, or maybe it was you guys, I don't know, did that was with the roof line, and you kind of abandoned that roof line. And I wonder if you gave any thought to keeping that element, or if that's just a non-starter to keep that the roof line where it was, reflecting the old.
So we've made an occupied roof. So we've really made the views and the views from the top of the building, which are going to be amazing, accessible both to people to live up there and for a residence amenity up on the roof that has both an exterior and interior space. So as opposed to having a cupola that is really rather restricted in its interior space and its ability for somebody to occupy it in the building, we've really expanded that, made it much more democratic, so that you can actually see views and look downtown. So it's really about changing the experience of the inside.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that penthouse there were 2-story penthouses.
Yes, they were 2-story penthouse.
And when we originally submitted our plans, I think it was a lot more Spartan of a structure We then kind of went in the opposite direction, and I think we added too much ornate detail, and then staff kind of brought us back to sort of the middle, kind of where we're at today, with a focus on, you know, things like curved balconies and brick rustication, horizontal masonry access bands, but keeping brick as the predominant, you know, building material. You know, doing the window treatments and things like that. So it's kind of trying to thread the needle just a little bit. Interest too.
It is also a change in the market, really valuing the rooftop amenity and that access for residents. Really adds value.
Is this taller than Taft Towers? I know it's like downhill from it, but what are those heights?
Taft is 9 stories, but
I think because it's downhill, floor taller.
Okay, so like kind of roughly the same. My other question, or I guess comment, was around the terrace space. It definitely does seem like, you know, I mean, it's nice if there's a tree there, especially because that big, old, beautiful tree is being, you know, torn down at the site, because you have to. But the fact that the grills and all those other amenities are going to be closed off, and like, nope, that's higher up than you, and the market rate affordable, you guys just don't have any of those amenities because none of them exist on the site. I think if there's a way to open that up so that like the families that live at Wakefield Manor can also enjoy that too, I think that would be much preferable. I think there was a suggestion of if you do kind of one walkway going up, then you can still have sort of that terrace, but at least a way to access it from the outside, just so that it's not so, you know, like literally you're below us when you're outside. Like everyone else is raised up and enjoying these nice things that the rest of you don't get to enjoy or even really see unless you're looking out here.
I will second that comment. Thank you for making it. Actually, I'm going to recognize Leo, who's had his hand up virtually, and then I'll come over to you. Leo, take it away.
Great. I'll associate myself with the notion of the height of the patio and the sort of hoi polloi of the sidewalk. Also, I think, you know, I understand that there's a garage under there, but the lower that you can get that, the better, just for the sightline aspect. And also to echo Commissioner Schroll's comment on the Troy Street, I'm still a little unsure as to that corner entrance. There is this sort of asymmetry to the corner entrance, which is a departure from the precedent architecture around you. If you look at the existing historic structures, all their entrances are at the center and the corners are solid except for the very deliberate, you know, corner windows with the little green posts. And so by putting the entrance at the corner, you're sort of departing, you're creating a new precedent, which is fine. I think it just has this weird asymmetry with that rounded edge. It's where the balcony is rounded on one side and it feels like it's missing the other half. You can see that on the plans, or you can see that on the elevations. I find that really disjarring. And I think it's leading to a bit of the confusion that you're hearing from some of the community, where we're not quite clear where the entrance is. So like, for instance, the activation of the Troy Street or Fairfax and how that corner, you know, sort of wraps around and brings the attention into itself, I think needs to be addressed or looked at. It's a little bit weak right now. I think I also want to echo staff's comment about, you know, less is more in a way. I think a lot of the brick detailing is sort of interesting and good to sort of pick up on, but, you know, careful of what you wish for on that one. If you start to getting ahead of yourself and you sort of bite off more than you can chew, and the details come a little bit sort of less crafted than they would have been in the 20s and 30s when this was originally built, you know, it sort of smacks a little bit of that sort of, you know, knockoff imitation thing. So you have to be careful that the details reference things, but don't, you know, pick up on too literally. So just be concerned. So I just really want to echo staff's comment on that. But I think my biggest difficulty with this building right now, architecturally speaking, is that corner entrance and sort of how it's not clearly defined, right? You almost need a sign, and sort of my architectural practice, we try to approach it that if you have to put a sign, the design hasn't fully carried its weight, right? If you can do it without a sign, and I think a corner entrance should be doable without a sign. I think it's something you ought to revisit. And I particularly don't like the balconies, the asymmetrical balconies. I think you can have balconies on the corner, but you really need to wrap that corner in a way that's symmetrical, both from a historical precedent and I think from a significance of the entrance of the building. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, since
Huh?
I'm transportation liaison,
Huh?
do I limit my comments to that or can I?
No, you can comment on anything,
All
please.
right, y'all let me
We
know.
are not living in bubble.
Yeah, so I mean, it just seems like that a lot of the issues here are arising from this small site and then the constraints on how much square footage you can put on it. And that's why, despite having this historical designation, it looks, frankly, kind of generic, like a lot of Arlington buildings. I mean, that's up to the way the regulations are. I was wondering, with that little alleyway from Troy Street, given that there is this requirement of the kind of related to the garden space, whether it could be something more than just like what it is now, an alleyway that you walk through, like at least have like maybe a bench running along it, like some type of feature where people could sit, maybe wait for an Uber, not something that they just like a dark space they kind of run through in those 49 feet that are really kind of narrow. So maybe it's something to consider to activate that space, make it more of a destination to the extent that it's possible, and in accordance with the whole garden unit, the historical aspect of it. Because right now it's kind of looking like a new development of Roslyn, which is like fine for central business district, and with the context there, and it doesn't relate to the consistent context here.
I'd like to echo those comments because I don't really see the garden apartment element here, which is supposed to be part of the Fort Myer Heights plan. And if you had asked me what building this is supposed to look like, I would never choose the buildings next door. It looks like another building in Roslyn or on Wilson Boulevard. I don't really think it evokes the neighboring apartments.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I just sort of follow up on Schroll's list for elevation of Troy Street to get that one. We can also do that for around the corner alleyway or pathway out of the building. Not sure how that. They have slightly listed elevation. Looking south.
We did.
If you've got one looking up.
There,
you go.
there. So the top
Yeah.
looking south, standing on the path that comes off Troy, looking south at the north side of the building,
Top one or
the top one.
it's going to be deeply planted. Those are
Yes.
hedges along there, so
Yes.
it's a very green pathway.
Right.
And you also want to have how the lighting is going to go, so that will always feel safe.
There will be, it will definitely be,
No, well, I understand that, but just how the lighting is. Narrow spaces tend to be nervous. And foliage is wonderful, but also can make you nervous at night. So there's some sort of that just feels inviting to walk. I'm not sure I want to go through here. That's what I'm.
point taken.
Thank you. Mr. Brinton? James Brinton, I saw your hand a moment ago.
Yeah, I just had another thought about the courtyard space. Is there any sort of guidance from either the county, like if we're going for garden style or having this openness, is that enough space for that many units and that many people? It kind of seems like it's not. I mean, it's echoing what the people just said before me, where seems like a lot of units for that little garden space.
Yeah, so in terms of for my Heights North plan, it doesn't specify, how big the space should be for its residents, but at the same time, plan itself is trying to preserve, the garden style aesthetic of, open spaces that anyone can interact with. So there is guidance in that aspect.
Okay, my next question is on slide 26. This may be a small detail, but I find it very important. I'm married to an arborist, so I see and hear a lot about this. I don't know if this is just an artistic rendering, or what type of trees those might be, but do you know, is there an arborist consult that will be making sure that those trees aren't going to grow too huge? They're really crammed in there, and those trees, if they're an oak or silver maple, can get so big, and that can become its own problem. Do you know if there's an arborist on site that will really choose the right trees and the right number of trees?
Yeah, I mean, our civil engineers selected the trees specifically for the size that they will become for across the entire site. So we're definitely not going to put anything there that would get outsized or too big for the area.
And if I may also say too, and Jeff Krebs with ICA, I don't know if you're on, if you want to say anything more, but I've just got some numbers here. But I guess in terms of the total number of trees being proposed, just by order of magnitude. So the prior approval had 27 trees planted. I think we are proposing 29. And in terms of the total amount of open space, the prior approval had a little over 10,000 square feet, and we are a little over 12,000 square feet for the same features, I believe. The courtyard area, the section that we were talking about that's just open to residents, is approximately 2,400 square feet. When you include everything with the pathways and the seating area where the canopy tree would go, it's about 2,800 square feet. And I think the prior approval was around 3,000 square feet or so, just for way of comparing it. Jeff, I don't know if I have that on.
No, I think, Andrew, I think you summed it up well. Just to answer more specifically the question, we do have a certified arborist on staff who has visited the site. He's conducted the inventory, and then I am a landscape architect, and we will certainly be selecting plant material that will be appropriate and will be, to your point, not too crowded, but gives as much canopy as possible. As you've heard many people say, it's quite a constrained site. So we're doing what we can with the plantable area that we've got. But I think we've as Andrew mentioned, we're planting a couple more trees than the previous application where we can, maximizing all available space. And though the renderings may look, a little bit artistic license, I think certainly the end result will be a plan that is very sustainable while meeting the canopy goals of the county.
Thank you.
And one of the things I asked this slide to be brought up. One of the things that staff really pushed us on the prior approval. There's 2 electric vaults, right along Fairfax Drive at the southern end of the site that were proposed with the prior plan. That's the only place they can go. And there was no ornamentation or embellishment associated with those at all. And staff really pushed us to try to find a way to make those areas workable and usable, and a place that could be welcoming and dignified for people that are visiting. So what we've done, if you take a look at the prior plan and what was approved and what this plan is, it's kind of a difference between night and day as far as it's kind of found space, really. So I just wanted to mention that as well, that should be a pretty positive.
Sort of on the found space. So there's also, that's someone's front door right there too. So I don't see a lot of other people using that space, because even though technically it's open to everyone, like it'll probably seem like that renter's space because it's right in front of their unit, and they're one of the few that has an exterior entrance just for their unit. But I'm curious, I don't know who owns the space right behind the cul-de-sac, if that's the county or VDOT, or so can't that be turned into some benches or kind of make that more park-like? Right now, there's nothing there, and it's such a waste of space. Can that be turned into some an amenity for these residents to at least sit under some trees, it just seems like that space would be another area to find, you know, some, like, let's plant more than a couple trees and let's put some benches down, or I don't know, something, to really use all of the space around it so that, you know, it's a bit more park-like than just grass.
So we would very much like to do that. Remember, we talked about the utility spaghetti that's underground? That's where it is.
Okay.
It's in Fairfax and it's going through this part. So there's a lot to maneuver around. We are relocating some, but this is why VDOT didn't put trees up.
It's just a barren looking place, right?
Yeah, following up on that, I think that, I understand that that may limit tree and that sort of landscaping, you know, a traditional maybe kind of tree-based landscape approach to that. But I don't think that that means we can't think creatively about how to make that a more inviting space. And I'm not personally persuaded that utility spaghetti is a reason for that area to not be improved in a meaningful way, to be more usable to everyone on the area. So let's put some thinking hats on what we can do that would be better for that. And I'd love to hear some creative answers for next time. Jim?
Yeah, no, thank you for following that. I was thinking exact same thoughts at the same time when you, so thank you for raising that about that, the end of the cul-de-sac there. The next one, I'd like to know who actually owns that. Is it the county, is it VDOT? If the county owns it, is it something that is under Parks and Rec? Yes. Who has jurisdiction over that? Because of the space that question about how that can be done. We're doing that in Clarendon, we Irving Street, which is going to be a park. The end of that's get in park. Same thing here. So, you know, there's lots of opportunity here for something that, you know, I understand why you can't necessarily put a big tree there. But there's lots of bushes, hedges, plantings, rain garden be there. Certainly benches could work there. Maybe that could be the dog space. You know, there's lots of, it's a nice amount of space. It's not a tiny piece of property. And just throwing some grass and gravel on it is not the answer. It's not good for the building, it's not for residents there. It just says all the wrong things about it. So, especially if it's going to be public. We need to do something more.
I endorse that.
And there was a question about the ownership. Jeff, I don't know
Yes.
if you have the ability to share the ownership thing, because it took us probably a month to figure that out, but we have a graphic that shows exactly where it is. And I think it's DES that owns it. VDOT owns a very small sliver of it.
Right, I would love to show that. I'm working from home, so I don't have access to that particular graphic, but the entirety of the green space at the end of the cul-de-sac north of the trail is owned by the county. VDOT owns just so a couple of feet north of the trail, page south. They own the rest of that. So the green space that in question is owned by the county. So we would be working with county staff to try to understand what could be done in that location.
And I think it's a discussion that we've had kind of internally about how it would work with our community benefit package, and whether or not it's you know, recommended by the plan, that, you know, how all that would work. So, but
They strongly want county to step up. They should have to deal with it. Owns it. There's lots of creative ways to deal with it. Could be that you end up taking responsibility for it. Building does. There's lots of ways we've sliced and diced this in other places, parts of other sites. But just leaving it as that grass, it's just, that is. And it's ugly. So, do that.
So I will, you know, circle back with county staff on insurance rates here. Going to be prepared for next.
Yeah, and I endorse that. I think that we should think creatively about what we think that beneficial, and if it comes down to something that close to community benefits, well, that's an agenda for next time. Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to associate myself with the comments. Also, like the fact that it's a cul-de-sac, it's kind of a way to reimagine this Americana and the vision of what a cul-de-sac is as Arlington transitions from a suburb to a more urban place, kind of an urban cul-de-sac. I don't know. If I were an architect, I'd be kind of excited to work on that. But I also had a clarifying question about the trail next to it and the buffering, I understand there's gonna be more landscaping or trees planted on that, like at some point in the future, because the Arlington, the bike trail, is that correct?
That is part of,
Yeah.
I think, master transportation plan as well as this Fort Mary Heights plan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there are, specific coming down the pipeline for those, with regards to the trail.
Okay. I mean, the reason I asked, and I think why a lot of people are asking about these trees, is given that it's proximity next to Route 50, which is kind of an ugly road, and it'd be nice to buffer the residents, the pedestrians, the cyclists a little bit from that, from the road. We are, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are increasing, I think we're increasing the landscape amenity panel, at least from Troy Street over for our section of it.
That's correct.
I think
So
5
we have a little bit of opportunity to plant within the area owned by the county between the trail and the sidewalk. So if you're on the Fairfax Drive side, there will be more of a planted buffer between you and the trail. What's south of the trail is entirely owned by VDOT, and I'm sure that the county, there is a plan, sort of a long-term plan afoot for Fairfax Drive alignment as well as the trail. And I'm sure the county staff is working with VDOT on whatever that, however that might shake out. But we have certainly not seen any of those plans. But
Yes. Oh, I also just want to say, we've kind of segued a bit into what will be the next topic, which is building height, form, and architecture. So at this point, I view us, and honestly, open space and landscaping. So I'm going to now view us as part of the withdrawal period. So we're on all of those topics, as it were. But yes, I recognize you.
Thank you. Question, so currently there's free on-street parking. I assume that's all going away with this development, or is that not the case?
That's also a Jeff question, but we aren't.
Along the Fairfax Drive side, that's where our loading entrance is going.
Yeah.
Jeff, I can't remember how many spaces we are keeping on the trail side of the street there. Are we preserving any of those spaces?
yeah, mathematically about 8 spaces, depending, just from a linear footage standpoint. As you know, the parking spaces are no longer striped. It's just whatever you can fit in. So perhaps 8 small cars, 6 Suburbans, that kind of thing. So there would be parking maintained on the south side, at least a little bit.
So to the prior discussion about they're going from 45 spaces a lot to 30, residents also do rely on the street parking to, fit their cars, and some of that's also going away. So for existing residents, they are losing a lot of parking because of this. I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but it is a thing that is going to impact a lot of people. And I know when I lived there, I barely drove my car, but I still needed some place to park it when I wasn't driving it because I took Metro most places. And yeah, that's just going to be a big change for people.
So that has been a constant refrain that we've heard, not only from the residents, and then on the other side is the county's 2017 policy that seeks to reduce parking wherever possible in the county's metro area corridors. So it's this thing of, okay, actual lived experience versus what the county's policy believes to be the greater good, and how do we thread that needle? That's been a constant struggle that we've had to deal with. And I know Dan Van Pelt and Jake Hurley from Grossly, they're traffic consultants, they're online, and I know the transportation's consideration for next time. My recollection, though, is that I think our traffic studies showed that 61% of the average trips would be non-vehicle related. They'd be pedestrian, transit, or bicycle. Okay, right, exactly. But that doesn't deal with the long-term storage issue that you're highlighting. So we're aware of it. I just wanted to let you know.
Again, chair's privilege. You're correct, transportation is on the agenda for next SPRC. I will say that one thing that I feel, level check this, you can think about and answer for next time we do a transportation conversation. It seems to me that with the focus of the new building intending that to be, very metro accessible, and we may have a lot fewer residents who living a car-heavy lifestyle because they are going to be metro-based and such. It seems to me you could end up, no matter how much parking you have for the tower, you could end up with a surplus of parking spaces periodically. And it seems unfortunate to me if there were not a way to capitalize on those being used by the residents of the historic properties in some capacity. I understand there's the design is to have separate parking and to have that intentionally separated for the residents of Wakefield Manor. But I'd like to hear creative solutions for how, if there is ultimately a surplus of parking and that could ebb and flow, how that might be handled, even if it's on a monthly basis or something else, so that we can kind of make sure that we are getting the right amount of parking for the site overall. And that's something that I'd love to hear creative solutions on. Yes.
Great. I'm gonna comment on open space. So I love the LEED status, the rigorous adherence to biophilic principles on the private residential property, bird-friendly elements, all of those things. I think that, alluding to my question earlier, it's pretty essential on the resident-only facade or the resident-only open space that you're providing to designate that for the residents and their dogs, especially. We have already in this area a lot of demand for a public open space that is not being met by curbs or sidewalk planters, things like that, for the dog use case specifically. And it also opens up the potential additional elements, which is really the second part of my comment, paying strong attention to the natural elements that can be added planter-wise, facade-wise, anything that connects the pedestrian, the non-resident to the building and its green spaces, that need is not necessary for dogs and for the resident use themselves. And so because right now my comments are regulated to the plan as we see it right now, which does not offer any public open space, I think it's essential that the resident use cases be handled within that public space within the building. And the missing gap I'm seeing is the dog use case right now. I'd also love to see additional use of like that DES property in conjunction with this for additional public space. And in that element, I think maybe the emphasis on this dog centric resident only open space could possibly decrease. But the needs of the community need to be met, especially with the increased density within the building itself. And dogs are missing in this one.
I had a clarifying question that I guess I could have asked earlier, but didn't think of. Is this going to be a dog-friendly building?
Yeah, and we do.
We have a dog spot inside, like we do have places to help take care of your dog.
Right.
Right, but so it's not that we are ignoring.
No, but
It is a
being dog
dog-friendly.
friendly and meeting the needs is a little bit different, and in an already congested area filled with dogs and dog needs as well.
Better than it seems good. What is the inside dog amenities? Is it like inside?
It's a place where you can walk, you can take your dog and wash.
It's like
just
a
a station, not a dog
station.
Got it. Okay.
There's no place inside the building that you would walk your dog.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that. The way you said it made me think, oh, that's new. Okay.
But by encouraging the residents, which is awesome, to have their dog in the building, having a wash station and all that great stuff, being able to also centrally locate that quick potty break is, I think, a higher priority than a jungle gym or other amenity in this building specifically for this neighborhood specific.
Yes.
Yes. I want to talk about trees and the open green space of which there is very. It seems to me that courtyard that is available just to the residents, that one specimen tree is really kind of, that's replacing the tree of significance. It's, just seems like there's an awful lot being put on that one. And just looking at this picture here, just the areas that you have control over, because it'd be great if we could do other things. I do know that they are going to be redoing that 50 chunks for the VDOT with the bike path. So that could be for something in the future. But just around that building, there's got to be a way you can do more with large canopy trees, shade trees. I'm thinking that courtyard is going to be really hot. And your garden as well. I mean, it's one of the things I see in a lot of these landscape plans is everybody just loves your ornamental flowering trees. And most of those are understory trees. And they don't do well in the blazing sun because where they grow naturally is in the understory. So if that's all you've got, they're going to really struggle. Plus, they're very pretty when they're blooming and everything, but it's not the same as a shade tree that is going to actually provide a lot of environmental benefits in terms of cleaning the air, cooling it off, giving you a shady sidewalk to walk your dog on, you know, when it's August and stinking hot. So I would really encourage, since you are like building out practically all of the space that you possibly can, that at least around the perimeter, you make sure you have the best, biggest underground planting boxes that you can get that are hopefully running through the entire sidewalk. And I know you've got, you know, there's utilities and there's other stuff going on there. But, you know, this is something we deal with in an urban environment. You do the best you can with that. And you get some really good shade trees that are going to do well in that environment. Arlington County has lists, and you said you have your arborists. Arlington has theirs. I'm sure they can get together and come up with trees that would work. I would also throw in there that would be very, very important to have watering those trees so that they at least have a chance to survive until they get big enough where they're better off on their own. That is my biggest. When I was reading through everything today, it was like 8% canopy coverage. That's sad. We can do better.
So just to sum up, incorporate large canopy trees in lieu of ornamental trees. That's number one. Number two, maximize the planter boxes. Number three, look at watering trees to ensure survivability, especially in the.
And you know, you've got your above ground planter boxes, which, you know, are great. I'm thinking of the ones that are under the sidewalks, the planting boxes that your street trees are actually living, which is different than your above ground planter boxes. Yeah, maybe something or other. But you know, they can afford to live in that. You're not going to get it, you know, a black gum or something. They have the boxes now, whereas before they were very constricted. They can have a lot more space underground, which you actually size where they're at.
One second. James Brinton, I thought I saw your hand up a moment before. Was that an oopsie? It's not up now.
Yes, I was just going to ask, has there been any in discussion about during construction where Wakefield Manor's residents will park during that time and how long that might be, like how long the construction would be?
We can also punt that to the next meeting when construction is being on the agenda.
Okay.
Called out. All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm good.
I want to second everything you said about the shade trees. This site gets baked during the summer. So I lived in Wakefield Manor facing for, probably 7 years, facing Arlington Boulevard. The temperature within my apartment would go up by 10 degrees in the afternoon on a hot sunny day. And they just have window air conditioning units in those units. And they're not powerful enough to really cool it down. The cheap rents are great. There's some other downsides about living in an older unit. While you guys are looking at the site, if there's a way to just bring shade trees around even the front on North Courthouse Road, they have those little baby ornamental trees that provide zero shade. I just think in general on the site, there's a lot more space to provide shade trees that just currently there are none other than that giant tree that's getting torn down, unfortunately. And over the years, a lot of the bigger trees have been torn down on the site and replaced with little tiny ornamental ones. So yeah, I think that would be a huge asset. if that's something that can be incorporated into it, kind of anywhere on the site. My other question was the little weird white house that's getting torn down. My understanding is that historically there were a bunch of those that kind of dotted the hillside. Has there been any thought to like sort of a nod to the history of these little white, tiny houses that there's just one left and that's the last one and it's gonna go away. And it's super weird, but incorporating that somehow into some of the, even if it's just outside a design feature in the little courtyard or something, but I think that is, at least from what I've heard, and probably Ralph Johnson and others know way more about like that history and what it used to look like in the World War II era. But that's something that if there's a way to kind of, make a nod to, these used to be dotted all around here. And then the last one was here before this building came. I think that could be just kind of interesting from a historical
Comment. We'll take a look at that.
So I want to be conscious of time. One question I'm going to throw out to the group. We kind of danced around this a bit, and I know there were several slides on the county staff presentation side, the applicant presentation side with regards to the narrowness of the separation at times between the historic buildings and the new development. Any feedback from this group? Any guidance? Anything we want to kind of share on that? We call out because it didn't specifically come up. Comments. Okay, please.
Yeah, I can't really criticize 13.5 feet because it was approved before, but if it was a site plan from scratch, I would. And I'm disappointed there are no shadow studies to show what the effects on buildings. Maybe the shadows would be helpful in terms of, at least in the morning, for the preventing heat in the summer, but not so good in the winter. So I do, and because when I think about, you just went through a contentious site plan with Marabella and the Lisa Courts, and I don't, and this is much less space than separation between those two. So I do have a problem with 13.5 feet.
There was a shadow study included.
Can you send it to the chair? They can send out the link.
And the space in between Wakefield Manor, so where it is the narrowest, because I know there's a door that residents now use to get from the parking lot to the laundry room and the rest of the units. Did you have a picture again of exactly what that kind of area was going to look like? Is it, I see some trees kind of in there.
The perspective.
There's an elevation that side of the building, but not from. I mean, what the Wakefield side would be. This side. Get there eventually. Lower elevation is would be facing the Wakefield Manor building. So we can also look at the plan because there's work that we're doing there in terms of right now there's garbage that's being collected there. So that is also being addressed.
Basically though, just a sidewalk with, there are going to be some trees lining it. Okay. But it is pretty tight, but I don't know if there's much that can be done about that.
Okay. So at this point, we're getting close. I want us to be reserving time for public comment. So this is last call, last comments, final thoughts from the SPRC group. Well, we will be getting to public speakers shortly. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to encourage as much on-site support as possible. That Fairfax is very interested in keeping this much local, not spending money for other locations built in the county.
Second.
I will also say that I presented at the Raycom Civic Association meeting not so long ago, and that is a consistent theme that came up. Most of the questions I got were actually on that point. That's consistent. Leo, you are on my screen.
Great. I just will highlight that I think a shadow study would be really useful here for us to understand how this is going to impact. And also, I think, just from a landscaping perspective, what plants are going to be viable where from a solar, sort of sustainability. The other thing is, and this is our next meeting, but, this has a permanently clear southern facing sort of exposure. So it's a great opportunity to look at real solar panel and energy harnessing, either now or as the building, ages, you can sort of look for that because you have a guaranteed southern exposure for the lifetime of this building. Other than that, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Last call for SPRC comments. Okay. Then we are going to go to public comment. And who is our first public commenter? You have 2 minutes.
Hi, can everyone hear me? So hi, my name is Jason and I live in Taft Towers, just across the street, and my apartment faces Arlington Boulevard. I love living in this neighborhood. It's really convenient, just a 6-minute walk to the metro, and really quiet besides the vehicular noise on Arlington Boulevard. Right now, the site is really horribly underutilized. There's limited pedestrian traffic, and the parking lots create an unsightly dead zone. The new site plan has better entry-level integration onto the sidewalks with a more functional green space, and I echo the comments made by people on the commission that hopefully that green space can be used for the community as a whole, not just residents in the building. I think the massing, height, and density are appropriate. The site is much less imposing than Woodbury Heights and the surrounding buildings, which are much taller. The current space between the site and Wakefield Manor is just a concrete and a trash dumpster. And next, there really needs to be welcoming spaces along Troy Street that cater and center to the pedestrian. The site needs to focus on people on foot and bike, not on cars driving along Arlington Boulevard. I don't really support really investing much into architectural detailing and things that are unnecessary on Arlington Boulevard because, why do we care what people think driving in their car? They're not going to be looking up from their car to see what's going on. And then people, of course, in the Fort Myers we shouldn't really cater to what their sight line is. We should be focusing on people, people walking and around the site. Just a note, 13th and Troy would be great space for a Capital Bike Share station. I've taken 364 rides on Capital Bike Share the past 2 years. And also, there's been a lot of comments on trees. And I do like that there's trees, but safety has got to be a priority, especially on the curb cuts. There needs to be making sure that, Troy Street, when I walk up Troy Street, there's tons of curb cuts and there's people coming in fast. So we need to be careful that the trees planted are not blocking the sight lines. I mean, I love shade, I love all that, but I like my safety and, people that are walking down, we can't have big giant trees blocking the sight lines, creating pedestrian conflicts. Other than that, it's a great building and I hope it gets built with the adjustments made. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Margaret.
Hi, I lived in this building. I lived in Wakefield Manor in the original building for 7.5 years, starting in 1978, and I loved living there. The thing that bothers me the most about this plan is that you're taking away sunlight from apartments, from at least 8 apartments, like totally, of the 13 apartments that are in that building. And you're doing that, well, and then you're adding light at night because of the path of what you're going to have to do to light the pathways. So I think that you should look at having the pathway that is going from Fairfax Drive north be the same width as the one that's going that is going, let's see, east and west along the north end of the new building. I don't see why one has to be a lot smaller than the other. So that's kind of mirroring some of the things that other folks have said. It also seems to me that these pathways will be dangerous at night. And it seems that you you haven't committed to it, but it seems that you're likely to put all the affordable apartments in the historic buildings, and that you're separating the amenities for the new building from those that will be available to the historic buildings. And that, I think, isn't right, because this is all one apartment complex. So thank you for the opportunity to say something.
Do you want to, thank you very much, Margaret. I did want to make one clarification. I think the comment with regards to affordable housing, that was not actually the plan. If the applicant wants to briefly address.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, Madam Chair, I think it was stated earlier, it's our plan to put all of the affordable units that are generated or required by the Fort Myers Heights North Plan in the new building, whereas the current site plan has 25% of them in storage structures.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification on that. Mr. Bernie Byrne, you're up, 2 minutes.
Yes, the total intensity of 2.60 FAR is excessive. There's nothing about the site plan that indicates that the project will have the exceptional community benefits required to justify this much density. Reduce the building's footprint to increase the amount of at-grade open space. This will increase the space available for plantings or other natural features. Replace the planned lawn at the end of Fairfax Drive with plants that support pollinators. Lawns don't support anything except maybe sparrows. The building is too tall and too large. It will tower above its neighbors. Setbacks and tapers are too small. The new building detracts from the historical character of the surrounding buildings in the neighborhood. It resembles nothing in its neighborhood. Reduce the width of Fairfax Drive to 3 lanes. The drive dead into the block. It will not need to accommodate parking on both sides of the street. Replace the removed street space with plantings of shrubs of species that support pollinators. This will reduce stormwater runoff and add better biophilia. The building lacks biophilia. It needs a large green roof. It also needs flowering native vines that descend from the roof and all balconies and ledges. It further needs additional vines that climb from the grounds on trellises. The courtyard should be neither private nor elevated. Replace most of the courtyard's hardscape with green space. To comply with the County Board's 2016 Monarch Pledge, enlarge the quote, native garden planting area above the utility vaults. Removing hardscape. Plant common milkweed, and this is important, plant common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, which is the only plant that feeds monarch butterfly caterpillars and that survives in Arlington's natural areas. Plant few wind-pollinated grasses and sedges, as these don't support pollinators very much. The conceptual landscape plan does not list the species and locations of shrubs, perennials, and ground covers. All must be native to Northern Virginia. The applicant must submit this complete plant list for public review before the next SPRC meeting. We need that.
Our last public speaker is Mr. Ralph Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to say that I have nothing against the building at all. But Wakefield is also a building that the county has pushed very hard for very long to keep and preserve. Therefore, I think attention on this plan must be to make sure that Wakefield is preserved and continues to be able to thrive. The back alleyway that Mr. I think Krebs, James Scholl said that he wants to get rid of the curb cut there. Well, that curb cut is necessary for our vehicles to go to maintain that building and to deliver supplies to that building. Without that, there is no way to supply it other than riding through the middle of the courtyard. And we have to have that road. And it's in terms of the dog park, I'm in favor of the dog park because we're anti-dogs. We don't want dogs there. And then those people will come over and you put their dogs in our place. We don't want that either. But you got to make sure that that road is not listed as a park. It is a maintenance vehicle place for us. And it's also a way to get the trash. It's the only place to do it. And unless we have these places, Wakefield will not thrive and survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We just turned to 9:01. Sorry, guys, got out of here a minute late. I appreciate everyone's time this evening. We are meeting again on May 15th, which I believe is English Day. Okay, so tentatively for Monday, May 15th, expect an update on that. Thank you all for participating and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Good.